Some people steal packages. Others steal Wi-Fi. But my neighbor, she stole my garden hose. Every single morning. At first, I thought I was losing my mind until I realized I was being pulled into a suburban war I never asked for, but if she wanted a battle, she chose the wrong lawn. Some mornings, you step outside with a cup of coffee and realize something just doesn't add up. That was me, 3 weeks ago. I opened my front door expecting crisp air and silence. Instead, I found my lawn soaking wet, puddles dotting the yard like little landmines. The ground squished beneath my slippers. The hose? Slightly warm, recently used, which would have made sense if I used it. I live alone, no kids, no roommates, no mischievous raccoons running irrigation schemes in the night. Just me, my caffeine, and, apparently, a yard that hydrates itself. My first thought? Faulty timer. Maybe the sprinkler system misfired. Then I remembered. I didn't even have a sprinkler system. Just a lone garden line, coiled like a sleeping snake beside a mysteriously saturated patch of grass. Something wasn't right. A quiet unease stirred in me. Not fear, not paranoia, just that unsettling emotional whisper of silent suspicion. The water bill came next. It didn't increase. It detonated. $100 jump, like I'd hosted a pool party for aquatic wildlife. But my backyard had only a dying tomato plant and a grill rusting its way into retirement. No leaks, no broken pipes. I checked everything. That's when I started watching my surroundings instead of my plumbing. My neighbors? Mostly solid folks. Jared and Melissa Thompson. Friendly, respectful. Brian Collins, the hammock guy, minded his business. Glenna Fields had recently stepped down from the HOA, probably for her own sanity. But then there was Cindy Prescott, age 51, newly arrived, already acting like the queen of the cul-de-sac. She wasn't officially on the HOA board, but she wielded her clipboard like a scepter. She'd filed noise complaints about wind chimes, lawn-length grievances, even scolded the mailman for overzealous parking. I hadn't accused her yet, but the seed of doubt had sprouted. This didn't feel like coincidence. It felt deliberate. Someone was using my water, not out of need, but out of entitlement. And that thought, subtle, invasive, tugged at something deeper. The quiet sting of being made invisible in your own home. Like my space no longer belonged entirely to me. And for the first time, I looked at my yard and felt like it wasn't mine anymore. I felt invaded. It was a Saturday. I just pulled into the driveway, groceries still in the back seat when I saw her. Cindy Prescott, 51, draped in a floral blouse and a sun hat, so massive it could signal aircraft. And there she was, dragging my garden hose across my lawn like she owned the deed. I froze, hand still on the wheel. She wasn't sneaking. She wasn't nervous. She was radiant with entitlement, smiling like the universe had owed her a favor and she was here to collect. She looked up and waved. "Hope you don't mind. Just a quick rinse," she chirped, hooking the hose to a pressure washer as if she'd borrowed sugar. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My brain short-circuited under the sheer absurdity. I sat there, gripped by that unique emotional cocktail, the bitter grin of helplessness. Then, like a ghost, I slipped inside and stared at the faucet. Betrayed. Later that day, I knocked on her door. Calm, friendly. Asked if she was having trouble with her water line. She laughed, a tinkly, false little laugh. "Oh no, sweetie. Your hose just has amazing pressure." I figured. Community property, right? Community property. I blinked. We didn't live in a utopia. This was suburbia. The water didn't flow from collective kindness. It flowed from my wallet. I told her firmly but politely that I didn't appreciate her using it without asking. She tilted her head like I was a poorly trained dog. "Well, I'm sure the HOA won't mind. We're all supposed to share and be neighborly." Then she closed the door. Just like that. No apology. No acknowledgement. And that's when it clicked. This wasn't confusion. This was conquest. Cindy didn't see herself as a guest in this neighborhood. She saw herself as its monarch. The rules, the lawns, the water. They were hers to interpret, bend, and claim. And me? I was just another serf, one more polite fool trying to reason with royalty. I've never been the yelling type. I like solving problems, quietly, surgically. So after Cindy closed the door in my face with all the grace of a courtroom gavel, I took the civilized route. I emailed the HOA, attached photos of her hauling off my hose, like it was part of a community welcome basket. I even included my water bill, which now read like a hotel statement for Poseidon's weekend getaway. 3 days later, I got a reply. Thank you for your concern. At this time, we encourage neighbors to resolve minor disputes amicably without HOA. Intervention. Translation? Good luck, pal. I stared at the screen, trying to find a crack, some sign the system worked. But there was nothing. Just polite indifference in Arial 12-point font. Fine. If access was the problem, I'd remove it. I bought a heavy-duty brass lock and sealed the spigot like I was guarding state secrets. No more loopholes. The next morning, I stepped outside with the smug satisfaction of a man who'd restored order until I saw it. The lock was gone. Not picked. Not twisted. Sliced. A clean, cold cut through metal. Deliberate. Precise. Like a declaration. I stood there, holding the broken lock, stunned. This wasn't petty theft. This was psychological warfare. And then I saw her. Cindy, across the street, spraying down her SUV like she was filming a commercial for Suburban royalty. The sun glinted off her windows, off her smile. I walked over, calm but buzzing with restrained voltage. Did you cut my lock? She didn't flinch. Oh, that thing. It was a tripping hazard. I took care of it. Then she turned up her music, flipped her hair, and went back to scrubbing like nothing had happened. I walked home silent, pulse steady, mind racing. Not with anger, but with clarity. Some people don't take because they need. They take because they think no one will stop them. And clearly, the system wasn't going to stop her. But me? I was just getting started. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't up against misunderstanding. I was up against Cynthia Prescott, a woman who didn't break rules because she didn't believe they applied to her. So I stopped hoping for help and started collecting evidence. I installed a discreet, motion-activated camera under the gutter, just above the spigot. To the street, it looked like a screw. To my phone, pure HD justice. 2 days later, I had my footage. There she was, Cindy, slipping across my lawn, like she was creeping through a museum after hours, hose in hand, expression smug, like she was starring in Entitlement Unleashed. She watered her plants, filled a kiddie pool, washed her golden retriever. All before sunrise, I posted a 20-second clip to the neighborhood forum under the title, "Neighbor uses my water every morning, without asking." The post exploded. Some neighbors were furious. Others laughed. One guy sent me a link to a motion-triggered sprinkler rigged to blast intruders. But the best part? Cindy saw it. I knew because the next morning, she came to my door. No sun hat, no pleasantries, just icy rage. She accused me of violating her privacy, ruining her reputation, and creating a hostile environment. I stayed calm, told her she was violating my property, my wallet, and my patience. She folded her arms, took a deep breath, and said the dumbest line I've ever heard. "Do something about it. I dare you." Something shifted in me. A click. Cold, focused resolve. I wasn't angry. I was activated. She wanted a fight? Fine, but not a screaming match. No slamming doors or printed flyers. I'd fight the way I knew best, with planning, precision, and poetry. If Cindy wanted water, oh, she was going to get it. Just not the kind she expected. That morning, I brewed my coffee slower. The air tasted different. Because revenge, real, satisfying, unforgettable revenge, takes time. And now, so did I. The next morning, I didn't wake up with coffee. I woke up with purpose. Cindy had dared me, and that dare lit a fuse I didn't know I had. No more polite emails. No more locks. It was time to reclaim my dignity, one brilliantly executed plan at a time. But revenge, real revenge, isn't loud. It's calculated. I took a day off, stayed home with the blinds drawn, and a notebook open. At exactly 10:32 a.m., I heard it. The hiss of the spigot. The gravel shuffle of my hose being dragged like a stolen prize. I peeked through the blinds. There she was, Cynthia Prescott, age 51, in yoga pants and oversized sunglasses, spraying down her driveway like it was auditioning for a detergent commercial. I stepped outside, phone in hand, pretending to text. She looked up, smiled. "See? Still works great. You're welcome." I smiled back, said nothing, walked inside and watched the footage. This wasn't about water. It was about control. About reminding me and everyone else that rules were for other people. That afternoon, I drove past a construction site just outside the neighborhood. That's when fate winked. An industrial-grade portable sewage tank, idle and forgotten. I pulled over and struck up a conversation with one of the workers, Rico Martinez, mid-30s, laid back. I mentioned I was testing an eco-friendly irrigation prototype. Sounded fancy enough to not raise questions. I slipped him a little cash. He shrugged. "Just don't mess with the pump." Back home, I got to work. I built a hose splitter, routed one line underground, and camouflaged it with fresh sod. One end led to the regular water. The other, discreetly, to the tank. I tested it once. The stench could have drop-kicked a linebacker. That night, I set the trap. The hose was in its usual spot, curled like bait. The camera armed. The valve primed. If Cindy wanted water, oh, she was going to get it. Not the kind she expected. And the best part? She'd never even see it coming. At 10:29 a.m., everything was in place. Camera rolling. Valve primed, hose resting like a coiled snake in morning dew. I sat inside, motionless, coffee cooling beside me. This wasn't about petty revenge anymore. This was art. This was a message. At 10:33, she arrived. Cynthia Prescott, yoga pants, oversized sunglasses, radiating the same smugness she wore like perfume. She didn't sneak. She glided, as if trespassing were her birthright. She dragged the hose across the lawn with a flourish, attached it to a brand-new rotating sprinkler, chrome, sleek, expensive. Center of her perfect lawn. She twisted the spigot. At first, a gurgle, then a wet cough. Then chaos, a high-pressure jet of thick, brown sludge burst from the sprinkler like a geyser of vengeance. It arced beautifully, striking the grass, the porch, the wicker love seat, and finally, Cindy herself. She screamed, slipped, stumbled. The sprinkler spun, slow and merciless, soaking her from head to sandals. Her pristine white blouse turned a blotchy sepia. Mascara streaked down her face like ink from a sinking ship. Neighbors emerged. Brian Collins dropped his coffee. Melissa Thompson gasped and turned her toddler away. Someone, probably Glenna, began recording. Cindy wrestled the hose like it was attacking her. She shrieked, pulled, and got sprayed again. Her rage echoed through the cul-de-sac. And I simply watched, still, silent. The orchestrator of poetic justice. 10 minutes later, she limped toward her front door, dripping in shame, covered in karma. The sprinkler sputtered one final spin, like a bow after a performance. I stepped outside, calm as sunrise, pretending to check the mail. She turned, eyes blazing through sludge. "You think this is funny?" she snarled. I smiled. "You told me to do something about it." She opened her mouth, closed it again, then stormed off, only to slip one last time on her now tainted lawn. That night, the video went live. Someone added slow motion. Opera music. A perfect title. When entitlement meets karma. It didn't just go viral. It united the block. The hose had spoken. The morning after the sewage opera, the block was quiet. No Cindy, no porch lectures. Just the low whine of pressure washers cleaning what pride couldn't. I thought it was over. Then came the envelope. No stamp, no label. Just a silent threat slipped under my door. Inside, a 3-page complaint from the HOA. Bold fonts, bureaucratic flair, and just enough legalese to sound serious. They accused me of creating a biohazard, violating community codes, and inflicting emotional trauma on a fellow resident. Apparently, brown water becomes a crisis when it bruises the feelings of royalty. I called the HOA, got passed between board. Members until Marcus Lyle finally picked up. His tone said everything. Hesitant, cornered. He confirmed it. Cindy had filed the complaint, with 2 witnesses and photos of her lawn. Post-apocalypse. No mention of trespassing. No mention of theft. No interest in truth. Just damage control. But Cindy miscalculated. She thought I'd fold. Instead, I built a packet. Footage, timestamps, water bills, a signed note from Rico Martinez, and, at the heart of it, Section 4.2b of the bylaws. Unauthorized use of utilities and property access constitutes grounds for fines and privilege suspension. I printed 6 copies, mailed 3 to the board, hand-delivered the rest to Glenna Fields, Brian Collins, and Mrs. Granger, the quiet ones who'd been watching. 2 days later, something shifted. People talked, this time out loud. Stories surfaced. Turns out, Cindy had filed over a dozen nuisance reports in 3 months. Noise, mailboxes, lawn gnomes, someone's wind chimes. The HOA, once her armor, started looking exposed. Then came the audio leak. Melissa, probably. A private board meeting, captured in shaky phone clarity. Cindy's voice, rising and cracking. She claimed she was being targeted for being a strong woman. But the more she ranted, the more brittle she sounded. By sundown, her armor wasn't dented. It was unraveling like cheap wallpaper in a storm. And for the first time since this war began, the system didn't feel like a fortress. It felt like a door, unlocked. It started with a knock. Brian Collins, usually reserved to polite waves and weekend grunts, stood on my porch holding a pie. Apple cinnamon, still warm. I just wanted to say thanks, he said. For what? I asked. He smirked. For reminding her she's not the HOA monarch. The next morning, Glenna Fields intercepted me by the mailbox. She handed me a thick, manila folder, copies of every bizarre complaint. Cindy had filed against her. One flagged her mailbox as too whimsical. Another claimed her hammock attracted loitering energy. I resigned after she laughed me out of a meeting, Glenna said. But not this time. Then came Melissa. She slipped me a USB drive with archived footage, screenshots, and a gem of a clip. Cindy scolding the mailman for parking. With hostile posture. The spark had caught. Within days, porch whispers turned into driveway councils. Neighbors swapped stories like war veterans. Someone, probably Jared, made flyers that read HOA, Queen of the Cul-de-sac. They appeared on light poles, car windshields, even taped to Cindy's own for sale sign. And Cindy? She vanished behind blackout curtains. No hose, no sandals, just silence. Then came the HOA's emergency meeting. This time, public. I arrived with a folder and a flash drive. So did 10 others. Melissa played her clips. Glenna read her logs. Brian shared how Cindy once yelled at his kids for loud chalk art. When it was my turn, I didn't dramatize. I simply read Cindy's words from the forum. Do something about it. I dare you. Then I played footage. Not the sewage scene, just a calm montage of her trespassing, dragging the hose, waving like it was a parade. Silence followed. Then, applause. It wasn't raucous. It was real. Neighbors who once stayed quiet now stood tall, like they'd finally remembered this was their street too. I walked home that night with no adrenaline, no smugness, just peace. We weren't just done with Cindy. We were done being quiet. For 3 days, her house stood frozen in time. No music, no hose, no clacking sandals or lawn patrol. Just shadows behind drawn curtains and silence thick as cement. Then, at exactly 12:17 p.m. on a Thursday, came the knock. I didn't flinch. Cynthia Prescott was flanked by Marcus Lyle, gripping a clipboard like it held divine truth. And Dana Shepherd, arms folded over a folder so thick it needed its own zip code. Cindy wore courtroom chic, pearls, heels, and a blazer stitched with pride and delusion. We're here to discuss an escalating conflict, Marcus began. Cindy interrupted. I don't feel safe entering his home. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Instead, I invited them to speak on the porch. They handed me a 3-page complaint, claims of environmental damage, emotional distress, and a request that I publicly apologize and attend an HOA conflict workshop. I nodded slowly. Give me a moment. I returned with a binder, labeled, color-coded, tabbed to perfection. Inside, timestamps, screenshots, water bills, neighborhood posts, and Section 4.2t, Cantitourds, 0.22b. But the centerpiece was a small USB drive. I think this says more than I ever could. The video played on Dana's laptop. No filters, no edits, just raw footage. Cindy dragging the hose, laughing, waving, invading, again and again. Cindy tried to cut in, accused me of stalking, called it all staged, but the footage kept playing. And with each passing second, the silence around us thickened, like fog before a verdict. Marcus cleared his throat. We'll need to review this further. They left quietly. Cindy hesitated on the steps. For a second, she looked like she might say something. But then she turned, heels tapping the sidewalk with misplaced confidence. That night, a for sale sign sprouted in her yard like an overdue apology. No letter, no goodbye, just retreat, quiet and complete. For the first time in weeks, the street exhaled. Later, I stood in my yard, watering the same tomato plant she once mocked. The hose hummed gently in my hand. No pressure, no tension, just peace. Because this time, the water was mine. And she knew it. It had been nearly a month since Cindy disappeared. Her house, once a fortress of unsolicited judgment and tactical lawn ornaments, now stood quietly under a fresh sold sign. The flamingo was gone. The hose patrol silenced. The street, once ruled by passive-aggressive tension, had exhaled. No one spoke of it. But everyone felt the shift. Neighbors lingered longer in driveways. The mailman whistled again. On Saturday, Glenna hosted a cookout. I brought potato salad. Melissa brought cookies. Brian brought a Bluetooth speaker that played 80s hits until the stars came out. We didn't talk about Cindy. We laughed. We grilled. We rebuilt. And then, new life. A young couple moved into her old house. Down to earth. Warm. They had a toddler who squealed with delight at the sight of a sprinkler. On their first day, they knocked on my door with a plate of still warm cookies and asked, politely, if they could borrow a rake. Not a hose, a rake. It nearly broke me. That evening, I stood by my window, watching them set up their own sprinkler. The father adjusted the spray while the mother held their baby, sunlight catching in the mist like gold thread through fabric. For the first time in a long while, this didn't feel like a battleground. It felt like a neighborhood. Of course, the internet remembered. Cindy's downfall had been meme-ified, animated, re-edited with opera. Her scream was now perfectly timed to a dramatic aria. Viral, again. And then came the email. Devon, new neighborhood. Same HOA horror. Same Cindy. He'd seen the video. Said she'd tried using his hose. No permission, no shame. I sent him everything. Footage, plans, a downloadable binder template with tabs. He replied with 3 words. This means war. I laughed. Not out of vengeance, but recognition. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it trickles. Sometimes it sprays. Sometimes it flows brown. But always, always, it finds a way. 1 week after Devon's message, another email arrived. This time from Lena Vance, a video editor in Oregon. She called the saga Suburban Poetry. Asked if she could turn it into a short animated film. I gave her my blessing. Let the legend live. Then AJ, mod of HOA Chronicles, reached out. He wanted a full timeline, a series recap, maybe even a digital zine. I started sketching it out that evening, sitting on the same porch where Cindy once strutted like royalty. But victory, it turns out, comes with echoes. No more hose thefts, no clipboard patrols. Yet my senses stayed sharp. Every hiss of water, every creak of the gate, every tap of a mailbox registered like a prelude to war. It wasn't paranoia. It was the scar tissue of vigilance. Then, one night, I found something beneath my doormat. No envelope, just a sheet of paper, creased, smudged at the corners. The handwriting was unmistakable, slanted, furious, dramatic. "You may have won this round, but the game isn't over. Cindy." I didn't laugh. Not this time. Instead, a cold weight settled in my chest. Not fear, not rage, just fatigue. I scanned the street. No moving truck. No lights in her windows. Her house remained empty. But I knew better. Cindy didn't vanish. She evolved. Somewhere out there, she was scheming, sharpening her next performance. I stepped into the garage and opened the cabinet. Inside, like an arsenal in waiting, sat the upgraded valve system, split flow adapters, a pressure filter, and a pristine coil of industrial-grade hose. I ran my fingers along its surface. Then I knelt by the spigot and set the mechanism. The hose curled beneath the grass like a viper in wait. Silent, patient, precise. Justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it watches. And when the moment comes, it flows. Months passed. The story didn't die. It evolved. The HOA Chronicles subreddit exploded past. 300,000 members. Lena's animated short racked up 1 million views. Someone started selling Justice Flows mugs featuring a cartoon hose flexing like Rambo. I didn't ask for it, but I smiled every time I saw one. Then came a postcard from Devon. 3 bold words in permanent marker. She tried again. But this wasn't just about Cindy anymore. Strangers from across the country began sharing their own tales. Gated communities run like petty dictatorships. Garden gnome bans, lawn color inspections, fines for wind chimes. What started as one stolen hose had become a banner, a quiet revolution. So I wrote something. An article, a story, a call to arms. How to dismantle tyranny with a garden hose. It was part satire, part blueprint, part therapy session. AJ posted it on the subreddit's front page. Within days, it was quoted on local radio. A journalist reached out. I hesitated, then said yes. The interview aired the following Tuesday. They called me the Hose Whisperer. A little dramatic, but accurate enough. That same week, the young couple next door invited me to their daughter's first birthday. There were balloons, laughter, sprinklers zigzagging in the sun. I stood near the fence, drink in hand, watching the toddler chase arcs of water with pure, unfiltered joy. Her parents laughed along, soaked and free. No one complained. No clipboards, no stares, just life. And for the first time in a long while, I felt something light bloom quietly inside me. Hope. Cindy never came back. Maybe she found another HOA to conquer. Maybe she's off writing angry Yelp reviews about outdoor furniture. I don't care. What matters is this. It started with a hose. It ended with a neighborhood reborn, a movement ignited, and an ordinary man who finally stood tall, not out of anger, but clarity. Because sometimes, to push back against small tyrannies, you don't need lawsuits or speeches. Sometimes, you need a hose, coiled like memory, weighted with history, and just pressurized enough to make the world listen. This story might seem like it's about a hose, but it's not. It's about boundaries, about how silence can be mistaken for weakness, and how patience can be sharper than any blade. It's about the quiet people, the ones who don't yell, who don't chase drama, who just want peace in the place they call home. People who hold the line not with fists, but with focus, with planning, with quiet courage. And it's about how entitlement, when left unchecked, can infect a community like rot under paint. But here's the truth. In every neighborhood, there's someone who watches, someone who remembers, someone who, when pushed too far, will rise, not to burn it all down, but to fix what no one else will. Sometimes justice doesn't wear a badge or carry a gavel. Sometimes it coils silently in the grass, waiting. Because when respect is stolen and dignity is laughed off a lawn, even the quietest person can become a force of reckoning. And all it takes to spark that reckoning is a hose.